The text was supposed to go to my best friend. Instead, I sent it to the woman who lived 20 feet from my kitchen window. If Claire wears that green sweater on her porch again, I'm going to forget every sensible rule I have and ask her to dinner. Either talk me out of it or help me choose a restaurant. I stared at the name above the message until my stomach dropped. Claire Donovan. Delivered. Before I could invent a believable explanation, someone knocked on my front door. I checked the clock on the stove. 5 minutes, exactly. When I opened the door, Claire stood there in the green sweater, one eyebrow raised. "Should I talk you out of it?" she asked. "Or do I get to choose the restaurant?" Before I tell you what I said, subscribe if you enjoy stories about ordinary mistakes that force people to become honest. And tell me in the comments whether you would have opened that door or pretended you weren't home. My name is Ethan Cole. I was 30 years old, worked as a restoration architect in Richmond, Virginia, and lived in a narrow blue craftsman house in the Bellevue neighborhood. I had been single for almost 2 years after an engagement that ended quietly and painfully. Since then, I had become good at repairing old buildings and terrible at risking anything personal. Claire was 26, owned a small floral design studio downtown, and had moved into the yellow house next door 8 months earlier. She was beautiful in the kind of way that made people look twice, but what held my attention was how she remembered everyone's name, rescued broken plants from curbs, and laughed with her whole face. We had shared coffee over the fence, borrowed tools, and acted as if neither of us noticed the electricity between us. Now she was standing on my porch, holding my mistake in her hand. "I can explain," I said. "That is usually what guilty people say." I was texting Marcus. "About me?" "Yes, in detail. I mentioned a sweater and dinner. I wouldn't call that detail." Her mouth twitched. "You also mentioned losing every sensible rule. I may have been dramatic. You alphabetize your spice rack, Ethan. Dramatic is not the first word anyone would use." I should have laughed. Instead, I looked at her and realized I had reached the point where embarrassment could either turn into courage or harden into another regret. "So," I said, "would you like to have dinner with me?" The teasing in her face softened. "You're asking because you meant the text. I'm asking because I meant every word before I sent it to the wrong person." She glanced back toward her house. A porch light glowed above the steps, and through her front window I could see several buckets of unopened white roses lined across the living room floor. "I have 40 centerpieces due tomorrow," she said. "Dinner out would be irresponsible. Then I can cook." "You cook?" "I own 7 labeled jars of paprika." "That is not an answer. It is evidence of commitment." She laughed, and the sound loosened something in my chest. 45 minutes, she said. "Your house. Nothing complicated." Then she leaned a little closer, close enough for me to notice a faint streak of green floral paint on her wrist. "And Ethan?" "Yes?" "Do not spend the next 45 minutes drafting a speech. I'm coming over for dinner, not a zoning presentation." She turned and crossed the narrow strip of grass between our houses. I stood in the doorway until she disappeared inside, then looked down at my phone. Marcus had finally replied. "Wrong, Claire?" I typed back. She knocked. His response arrived immediately. "Marry her." I put the phone face down and opened the refrigerator. 45 minutes later, Claire walked into my kitchen carrying a bottle of red wine and a cardboard box of damaged roses. "The wine is for dinner," she said. "The roses are because I can't throw them away even when the stems are too short for the order." I had made lemon chicken, roasted potatoes, and a salad that looked more impressive than it was. I had also moved the spice jars into a cabinet after deciding her joke had made them seem unsettling. Claire noticed the empty shelf immediately. "You hid the paprika." I wanted to appear spontaneous. "That ship sailed when you folded the dish towel into thirds." We ate at the small oak table by my kitchen window. At first, the conversation stayed safely on familiar ground. Her impossible client, my argument with a contractor over original window trim, the elderly couple 3 houses down who fed every stray cat in the neighborhood. But the text sat between us like a third guest. Halfway through dinner, Claire set down her fork. "How long?" she asked. "How long what?" "How long have you wanted to ask me out?" I considered lying by a few months, which would have been pointless. Since the afternoon you climbed onto your porch roof with a garden hose. She stared. That was my second week here. You said the gutter was clogged. It was. You were wearing sandals. That part was poor judgment. I offered to help, and you told me you had already watched 2 videos. I had. You nearly slid into the hydrangeas, but I didn't. You grabbed my shirt and took 3 buttons with you. Her cheeks colored. I replaced them. You sewed on 4 different buttons. I was making the shirt more interesting. That was when, I said. Claire looked down at her wine, smiling in a way that was suddenly shy. I thought it might have been the Christmas lights, she said. What Christmas lights? The night you stood in the rain for an hour because my ladder was too short. That was basic neighborly assistance. You got pneumonia. It was a cold. You brought me soup while you were sick. You were sick too. She looked up. That was when, for me, the room went still. There are moments when the world does not change, but your understanding of it does. The refrigerator kept humming. A car passed outside. Somewhere in Claire's house, a timer began to beep through an open window. Yet the 8 months behind us rearranged themselves into a different story, one in which every borrowed hammer, every porch conversation, every cup of coffee left on a fence post had carried more meaning than either of us admitted. You could have said something, I told her. So could you. I was trying to respect the fact that we're neighbors. I was trying not to make you uncomfortable. We are extremely considerate people. Painfully, the timer at her house kept beeping. Claire groaned. The roses. We carried our plates to the sink and crossed to her house. Her living room had been converted into a temporary workshop. Buckets covered the floor. Ribbon spilled across the couch. 40 glass bowls waited on folding tables, each half filled with water and eucalyptus. You don't have to help, she said. I know. You have work tomorrow. So do you. She handed me a pair of clippers. Cut every rose stem at an angle, 6 inches long. If you destroy them, I will reconsider dinner. I thought this was dinner. This is the practical exam. We worked until nearly midnight. Claire designed while I trimmed, carried, filled, and cleaned. She moved with calm confidence, turning loose branches and imperfect flowers into arrangements that looked effortless. At one point, she tucked a short white rose into a chipped blue bottle and placed it beside me. For your alphabetized kitchen, she said. I thought damaged flowers were your responsibility. They are. That one isn't damaged. It just doesn't fit where people expected it to. I looked at her, but she had already turned away. When the last centerpiece was finished, we stood on her porch beneath the yellow light. The neighborhood was quiet. Her shoulder brushed mine. I had a good time, she said. Cutting stems? Watching you pretend not to panic every time I came close? I was holding sharp tools, of course. I wanted to kiss her. She knew I wanted to, but she was tired. And the night had already given me more than I expected. Good night, Claire. I stepped off the porch. Ethan. I turned. She came down 1 step, placed her hand lightly against my chest, and kissed my cheek. That, she said, is for finally sending the right message to the wrong person. Then she went inside and left me standing in the grass, smiling like an idiot. The next morning I found a coffee cup on the fence between our yards. Claire had written 1 word on the lid in black marker. Intentional. I carried it to work and kept the lid on my desk all day. My firm occupied the 2nd floor of a converted tobacco warehouse near the river. I spent most of that Friday reviewing plans for the renovation of an old elementary school, but my attention wandered every time my phone lit up. At 4, my boss, Henry Walsh, appeared in my doorway. You look cheerful, he said. I'm reviewing masonry reports. That has never made anyone cheerful. Henry was 62, broad-shouldered, gray-haired, and incapable of approaching a subject indirectly. He closed the door behind him and sat across from my desk. The Nashville office needs a director for its preservation division, he said. I put your name forward. The sentence landed with the weight of something I had once wanted badly. Henry had talked about the expansion for nearly a year. The position meant leading my own team, choosing projects, and becoming a partner within 18 months. It also meant leaving Richmond, When? I asked. They want an answer in 6 weeks. The move would be in September. I looked at the white rose Claire had given me. Henry followed my eyes. Is there something keeping you here? Maybe. Then find out whether it's real before you turn down something that is. I disliked how reasonable that sounded. That evening, Claire and I had our first official date at a small Italian restaurant in Church Hill. She wore a navy dress and silver earrings shaped like leaves. I had seen her in work clothes, jeans, raincoats, and the green sweater that had nearly ended my ability to think. None of that prepared me for the moment she walked toward me under the restaurant's string lights. You're staring, she said. I'm gathering architectural data. On what? Structural integrity. She smiled. And your conclusion? I should stop talking before I ruin this. Strong conclusion. Dinner was easy until it became honest. Claire told me she had started working in flower shops at 16 after her mother died. Her father, a traveling salesman, had loved her but had never known what to do with grief. So he had answered it by staying away more often. By 22, she had opened Donovan & Stem with a borrowed van, 3 credit cards, and a stubborn belief that beauty mattered most when life was difficult. I don't sell flowers because weddings are pretty, she said. I sell them because people need markers. This happened. We chose each other. We survived this year. We remembered someone. I told her about my parents' divorce, the way my father had left when I was 14, and how my mother and I had spent years restoring the blue house together. She had died from a stroke 3 years before my engagement ended. My former fiancé, Meredith, had wanted us to sell the house and move to Boston. I could not do it. She could not stay. Neither of us was wrong, which somehow made the ending harder. So you stayed for the house? Claire asked. I told myself I did. And the real reason? I wasn't ready to lose one more thing. She did not offer a comforting phrase. She only reached across the table and laid her fingers over mine. After dinner, we walked through Libby Hill Park. The city lights spread below us, and the summer air smelled like cut grass and river water. When we reached the overlook, Claire leaned against the railing. There's something I should tell you, she said. For one irrational second, I thought she had received a job offer in another city, too. I'm trying to buy the old Bellwether greenhouse on Brookland Park Boulevard. I knew the building. Everyone in the neighborhood did. The greenhouse had been built behind a brick florist shop in 1924. The shop had closed years ago, and the glass structure behind it had slowly surrendered to vines, rust, and weather. What would you do with it? Move my studio there. Add a classroom. Let local artists teach workshops. Offer free arrangements to families using the hospice center. She looked almost embarrassed by the scale of her hope. I've been saving for 5 years. The owner agreed to hold it for me until the end of August, but the bank wants a renovation estimate before they finalize the loan. You need an architect. I know one. Claire, I'm not asking for free work. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? I thought of Henry's offer. 6 weeks, September, Nashville. I should have told her then. Instead, I looked toward the city and said, mixing business and whatever this is could get complicated. She studied me for a moment. Whatever this is? I didn't mean that badly. You meant it cautiously. I'm trying not to make promises after one dinner. I didn't ask for a promise. I asked whether you would look at a building. Her voice was calm, but I heard the shift in it. I turned toward her. Yes, I'll look at it. Professionally, you'll pay my firm's normal consulting rate, and if I think it's a terrible investment, I'll tell you. And if I think your design is boring, I'll tell you. I assumed that. She extended her hand. Professional agreement. I shook it. Her fingers stayed in mine. Personal disagreement, she added. About what? You are not calling this whatever this is. What should I call it? A date. One date, followed by another date, assuming you don't fail the greenhouse inspection. That sounds like a conflict of interest. Then you should perform very well. She stepped closer. The joking faded from her expression, leaving something open and brave. Ethan, I don't need you to promise forever, she said. but I do need you to be present for whatever you choose. I have spent too much of my life around people who were always halfway out the door. The Nashville offer seemed to move between us, invisible and heavy. I told myself I would explain after I knew whether the job was even real. After I had more information. After the second date. Instead, I said, I'm here. It was true in the narrowest sense. Then I kissed her. The first touch of her mouth was gentle, almost cautious. She gave me time to pull away. I didn't. I placed one hand at her waist, and she rested both hands against my chest. The kiss deepened. Not into urgency, but recognition. 8 months of small kindnesses and restrained glances finally had somewhere to go. When we separated, Claire's forehead rested against mine. That was worth the accidental text, she whispered. I was hoping you'd say that. You still have to inspect the greenhouse. I knew there was a condition. There are several. Of course there are. She kissed me again before listing them. Saturday morning, we met at the Bellwether property. The front shop had boarded windows, faded cream brick, and a hand-painted sign barely visible above the door. Behind it, the greenhouse stretched 40 feet into an overgrown lot. Several glass panels were missing. Ivy had threaded itself through the metal ribs. Rainwater pooled across cracked concrete. Claire stood in the center with her hands on her hips. Well, it's worse than I expected. Her face fell. And better, I added. That makes no sense. The structure is old steel, not aluminum. Most of the frame can be repaired. The brick walls are stable. The roof drainage is a disaster, and the electrical system probably remembers President Eisenhower, but the building has good bones. She turned slowly, seeing it through my eyes. Could it become what I described? Yes. The single word changed her whole expression. For the next 3 hours, I measured while Claire followed with a notebook. She described movable work tables, drying racks, a cooler, a long farmhouse sink, and a small wall where visitors could write the names of people they wanted remembered. I sketched as she spoke. Near the rear wall, she found a rusted metal drawer hidden beneath a collapsed counter. Inside were old order cards from the 1950s, each written by hand. She read one aloud. 12 yellow roses. For Ruth. 43rd anniversary. She still laughs at my bad jokes. Claire pressed the card to her heart. This is exactly why I want the building, she said. Not because it was profitable, not because it was charming, because strangers had once used it to say the things they were afraid time might erase. I looked at her standing beneath broken glass. Sunlight caught in her hair, and understood that my attraction to Claire had never been only about beauty. She made neglected things feel worth saving. The realization should have made me tell her about Nashville. Instead, it made me more afraid to. Over the next 3 weeks, the greenhouse became our shared language. I prepared drawings after work. Claire gathered financial statements, vendor quotes, and letters of support from hospice nurses, neighborhood groups, and local artists. Most evenings, one of us carried dinner across the grass between our houses. We still had separate routines, separate keys, and separate front doors, but the path between them became worn enough to show in the lawn. Our second date was a minor league baseball game where Claire admitted she did not understand the rules and cheered whenever anyone ran. Our third was a Sunday morning at the farmer's market, where she bought more peaches than 2 people could reasonably eat and made me promise not to organize them by ripeness. On our fourth, she took me to the storage unit where she kept old vases. We spent 2 hours sorting colored glass while she told me the history of each shape. The relationship did not feel dramatic. It felt specific. She liked the crisp corners of brownies and left the middle pieces for me. She hummed when concentrating and denied it when I mentioned it. She never arrived anywhere without extra safety pins. She learned that I woke early, hated olives, and sometimes stood in my mother's old bedroom without turning on the light when I missed her. One Tuesday evening, a storm rolled over Richmond while we were working at the greenhouse. The sky darkened so quickly that we barely had time to cover the drawing table before rain hammered the remaining glass. "Back room," I said, "away from the panels." Claire grabbed the box of old order cards before following me into the brick shop. The power had been disconnected years earlier, so we used our phone flashlights. Wind pushed water beneath the front door. A branch struck the roof with a crack that made her flinch. "You all right?" I asked. I love flowers. I have never claimed to love weather. We sat on the floor behind the old sales counter while the storm passed. Claire held the order cards inside her jacket to keep them dry. "You saved paper before yourself," I said. "They're people's stories. They're carbon copies of flower orders. Same thing sometimes." Lightning flashed through the boarded windows. She looked at me. "What would you save from your house?" The answer came immediately. "My mother's drafting table. Not photographs? They're backed up? Of course they are." She bought the table at a school auction for $20. It was too large for the room, so we had to take the door off its hinges to get it inside. She refinished it herself. "Did she draw?" "No." "She paid bills there?" "Did crossword puzzles?" "Wrote angry letters to the utility company." Claire smiled. "Then why does it matter?" "Because every important conversation in that house happened beside it." She leaned her head against my shoulder. "My mother had a blue ceramic bowl," she said. "She kept lemons in it, even though nobody in our house ate enough lemons to justify buying 6 at a time." After she died, my father donated almost everything while I was staying with my aunt. He said he couldn't stand looking at it. "You never found the bowl?" "No, I'm sorry." I was furious for years. Then I realized he wasn't trying to erase her. He was trying to survive a house that kept reminding him she was gone. Her fingers tightened around the order cards. Understanding someone's reason doesn't always repair what they broke. I knew she was not talking only about the bowl. "Is that why you said you can't be around people who are halfway out the door?" My father called every Sunday. He sent money. He came to graduations. He loved me. She paused. But when things became difficult, he left the room. My last boyfriend did the same thing in a more polished way. He would say he needed time, then disappear for days and return when I had made my feelings convenient for him. What was his name? Owen. What happened? I asked him to move in. He said he wasn't ready. 2 weeks later, I learned he had applied for a job in Seattle 6 months earlier. He had been planning a life that didn't include me while sleeping in my bed 3 nights a week. The Nashville offer seemed to burn in my pocket even though the letter was at home. I could have told her then, I should have. Instead, I focused on the distinction that made me feel less guilty. I had not applied for the job. I had not accepted it. Henry had nominated me without asking. I was still deciding. Claire lifted her head. "You became very quiet. I was thinking that Owen was an idiot. He was frightened. That doesn't excuse it." "No," she studied my face. "It just explains it." The rain softened. I kissed her because I loved the honesty in her, and because I was ashamed of my own. The contradiction followed me home. 2 days later, Henry called me into the conference room. A woman in a charcoal suit stood by the window, reviewing plans. "Ethan," Henry said, "you remember Meredith Shaw?" Of course I did. My former fiancé turned around. Time had changed small things. Shorter hair, sharper glasses, a new confidence in the way she stood. But her expression was familiar. "Hello, Ethan." Meredith worked for a development company in Boston. Her firm had purchased a 19th-century hotel outside Charlottesville and wanted Walsh & Green to oversee the restoration. She would be the client representative. The project was large enough to occupy a team for a year. Henry spoke enthusiastically about budgets and schedules. I heard only the uncomfortable rhythm of the past entering the present. When the meeting ended, Meredith stayed behind. "You look well," she said. "So do you. I heard about your mother's house winning the Preservation Award. It was the Neighborhood Association's award. You always minimize things when you're proud, and you still identify habits before saying why you're here." She gave a small smile. "I'm here because my company bought a hotel. That's the official answer. The personal answer is that I wanted to know whether working together would be difficult. Will it be difficult for you? No, I'm married. The surprise must have shown on my face. "His name is Daniel," she said. "We have a daughter. She's 11 months old. I'm happy for you." "I believe you." She looked down at the plans. "Are you happy?" I thought of Claire asleep against my shoulder during a movie, her feet tucked beneath her. I thought of the coffee lid in my desk drawer, and the path worn through our grass. "I might be," I said. Meredith nodded, as if that answer told her more than I intended. When I left work, Claire was waiting beside my truck. She had brought takeout and 2 rolls of tracing paper. "Your receptionist said you were trapped in a meeting," she said. "I decided to rescue you." Then Meredith walked out of the building. Her gaze moved from me to Claire. Mine did the same in reverse. "Claire, this is Meredith Shaw," I said. "Meredith Claire Donovan. My neighbor." The word came out before I could stop it. Claire's expression did not change, but I felt the air shift. Meredith, to her credit, understood immediately. "Ethan and I used to be engaged," she said. "A long time ago. I'm the client on a new restoration project." Claire offered her hand. "It's nice to meet you." "You too." Meredith shook it, then looked at me. "I'll see you Monday." After she left, Claire handed me the takeout bag. "My neighbor?" she asked. I panicked. "You once corrected a city inspector while he was threatening to fine you. But introducing the woman you kiss every day caused panic? I didn't know what word you wanted. You could have used my name and stopped there. That would have been smarter." Yes, she was not angry. That made it worse. I reached for her hand. "Meredith being here doesn't mean anything. I didn't assume it did. She's married. I didn't ask. She has a baby, Ethan." Claire waited until I stopped. "I am not jealous of your past. I'm wondering why you seem afraid to acknowledge your present." The honest answer was that naming us made the future feel real, and the future had a deadline I still had not mentioned. "I'm not afraid of you," I said. "That wasn't my question." She picked up the tracing paper and walked toward her van. "Are we still working tonight?" I asked. "Yes, the bank meeting is Tuesday. We have a deadline." "And after?" She looked over her shoulder. "After that, maybe we should decide whether I'm only your neighbor." I stood in the parking lot with dinner in my hand, and the first clear warning that caution could hurt someone as much as recklessness. Tuesday's bank meeting went better than either of us expected. The loan officer approved the purchase contingent on a final structural report and proof that Claire could cover 10% of the renovation costs herself. She already had most of it. The rest, she said, could come from a series of paid workshops and a neighborhood fundraiser. We walked out of the bank, holding a folder that represented 5 years of her work. Claire stopped on the sidewalk. "I should be happier." "You are happy. I'm also still annoyed with you." "Both can be true." "That is an irritatingly healthy answer." I rehearsed it. She laughed despite herself. I took her hand. "I don't want you to be only my neighbor." "What do you want?" "You, in a way that is inconvenient, distracting, and apparently obvious to everyone except us." "That is closer. I want to be your boyfriend, if people still use that word at 30. They do when the alternative is whatever this is." "So?" She let me wait long enough to deserve it. "Yes," she said. But no more evasive answers. I would rather hear something difficult than discover something easy was only half true. I promised. Then I broke the promise by waiting 1 more week. The fundraiser took place on a Saturday evening in the empty brick shop. We swept the floors, hung temporary lights, displayed Claire's arrangements, and placed enlarged copies of the old order cards along the walls. More than 100 people came. Mrs. Alvarez sold raffle tickets with such intensity that 3 contractors bought 20 each. Marcus tended bar and spent the night grinning at me whenever Claire passed. By 9, she had raised more than enough to meet the bank requirement. She stood on a wooden crate to thank everyone. Her voice shook when she spoke about the greenhouse becoming a place where people could learn, grieve, celebrate, and make something with their hands. I watched from the back of the room and felt proud in a way that was almost painful. Henry appeared beside me carrying 2 glasses of wine. "You built a strong plan," he said. "She built the reason for it. And Nashville would give you the authority to do this kind of work full-time." "Not tonight, Henry. The board needs your answer Monday." I turned toward him. You said 6 weeks. They moved the schedule. I tried to get you more time. Across the room, Claire was accepting congratulations. She looked radiant and exhausted. I can't decide in 48 hours. You can. You just don't like the cost of either answer. Before I could respond, Marcus called my name. Claire had reached for the microphone again. There is one more person I need to thank, she said. The man who told me the building was worse than he expected, then spent 3 weeks proving that wasn't the end of the sentence. Ethan, come here. The crowd applauded. I crossed the room, aware that Henry was still behind me. Claire handed me a small framed order card. She had chosen the one for Ruth, the 43rd anniversary, the bad jokes. For your drafting table, she said quietly. I kissed her in front of everyone. It should have been the happiest moment of the night. Then Henry raised his glass and said, loud enough for the people nearest us to hear, Richmond will miss him when he's running our Nashville division. Claire went still. The applause faded unevenly. Henry's face changed as he realized what he had done. Claire, I said. She stepped down from the crate. When were you going to tell me? It isn't decided. That wasn't my question. Can we talk outside? No. We can talk now, quietly. Her voice remained controlled, which made every word sharper. When did you know? The morning after our first dinner. Her eyes closed for a second. The morning after the text. Yes, and the night in the storm. When I told you exactly what Owen did, I hadn't accepted anything. You let me describe the most humiliating experience of my life while you were hiding the same kind of decision. It is not the same. I didn't apply for this. I didn't plan it. But you protected your ability to leave by keeping me uninformed. People around us pretended not to listen. Claire looked at the flowers, the lights, the evidence of her dream, and I saw the celebration being contaminated by something I had chosen not to say. I was afraid, I admitted. So was I. I didn't want to ask you to factor me into a decision after a few weeks. You didn't have to ask. You had to tell me the decision existed. I reached for her. She moved back. Please don't make me comfort you for hurting me, she said. Then she walked into the greenhouse and closed the door behind her. I did not follow. That was the first honest thing I did that night. For the next 9 days, we spoke only about work. Claire answered questions about permits. I delivered the structural report. She paid my firm. The path between our houses remained visible, but neither of us used it. I turned down Nashville on Monday. Henry asked whether I was doing it for Claire. No, I said. I'm doing it because I want to build a preservation practice here, and I kept treating that desire like fear instead of ambition. He studied me across his desk. Are you resigning? Not today. But I want to reduce my hours after the hotel project and start taking community restoration clients under my own name. If the firm can't allow that, then yes. To my surprise, Henry smiled. I have been waiting 5 years for you to stop asking permission. My decision did not repair anything with Claire. I knew better than to present it as proof of love. Turning down Nashville was about the life I wanted. Telling her the truth should have happened before I knew which life that was. On the 10th day, a city inspector called. One of the greenhouse's rear foundation walls had shifted more than my initial survey revealed. The repair would cost nearly $30,000 above our estimate. Without it, the bank would not close. I drove to the property and found Claire sitting on the floor beneath the faded bellwether sign. The loan folder lay open beside her. I can't cover it, she said before I spoke. The fundraiser money is committed. The owner won't reduce the price. The bank gave me 5 days. I sat several feet away. I'm sorry. Please don't tell me we'll find a way. I won't. She looked at me, surprised. I have 3 possible ways, I said. None are guaranteed, and all require you to decide how much control you are willing to share. I explained them. A state historic tax credit could cover part of the structural work, but processing would delay the purchase. A local community development nonprofit might buy the building and lease it to her with an option to purchase later, but she would not own it immediately. The third option was a phased sale. Buy the brick shop now, lease the greenhouse from the owner, then purchase the rear parcel after the foundation was stabilized. You already researched this? She asked. since the inspector called. Why? Because the project matters. And because my mistake does not make your dream less worthy of professional work. She stared at the old order cards displayed along the wall. I heard you turned down Nashville, she said. Henry told you? Marcus did. Marcus also said you threatened to alphabetize his liquor cabinet if he interfered again. That was private. Did you turn it down for me? No. The answer hurt her for half a second. Then she understood. Good, she said. I turned it down because I want to stay in Richmond and start my own preservation studio. I should have known that before you. I should have told you while I was still confused. Yes, I loved being with you. I also used uncertainty as an excuse to avoid being accountable. Those are both true. Claire's eyes filled, but she did not look away. I don't know how to trust you again because you finally said the right thing, she said. You shouldn't. What do you want from me? Nothing today. Choose the option that is best for your business. I'll help under the same contract. If you decide you never want me on your porch again, I'll respect that. I stood and left the plans beside her. At the door, she said my name. I turned. Thank you for not promising we'll find a way. You taught me that reasons and repairs are different things. For the first time in 10 days, her expression softened. Claire chose the non-profit partnership. It gave her a 10-year purchase option and kept the greenhouse under local control. For the next month, we worked side by side without pretending the relationship was repaired. I sent written updates instead of appearing at her door. She asked direct questions and expected direct answers. When I did not know something, I said so. Trust returned in small measurements. One evening, after the foundation grant was approved, Claire found me locking the greenhouse. Walk home with me, she said. We took the long route through the neighborhood. At our corner, she stopped beneath a maple tree. I miss you, she said. I miss you too. That does not erase what happened. I know. I also don't want fear to make every decision for me. She drew a slow breath. I'm willing to try again. Slowly. No secret deadlines. No grand sacrifices presented as romance. No calling me your neighbor when you panic. I can agree to all three. And if you receive another job offer, you hear about it before Marcus. That is a very low standard. I'm rebuilding. She smiled, then reached for my hand. We did try again. Not with a dramatic reset, but with clearer habits. I began renting a desk in the Bellwether shop while launching my preservation practice. Claire opened the front studio first, then the greenhouse 6 months later after the structural work was complete. The first workshop was free for hospice families. The remembrance wall filled before noon. Our houses remained separate, though we added a small gate between the yards. Claire insisted the gate was practical. I pointed out that she had planted climbing roses around it. She said beauty and practicality were allowed to coexist. A year after the accidental text, I was cooking dinner when my phone buzzed. Come next door. I'm wearing the green sweater, and I have something irresponsible to say. This time the message was intentional. I crossed the yard and knocked on her door. Claire opened it before my hand dropped. The green sweater was older. The porch had been repainted. And the woman standing in front of me was no longer a possibility I admired from a safe distance. She was the person who knew my fear, required my honesty, and still chose to build something real with me. What irresponsible thing? I asked. She held up a key to the greenhouse office we had renovated together. I made room for your drafting table. I laughed, then kissed her. The first message between us had been sent by mistake. Everything after it. Every hard conversation, every repaired wall, every choice to stay present, had been deliberate. If this story reminded you of a moment when honesty changed the direction of your life, share it with someone who might need the reminder. And remember, the right person is not the one who never makes a mistake. It is the one willing to tell the truth, make the repair, and keep choosing you after the door opens.